Good day everyone, my name is Angeline Paraiso. I'm going to discuss about the Three Worlds model by French demographer Alfred Sauvy. So, the Three Worlds model by French demographer Alfred Sauvy, 1952, aimed to categorize countries based on their development and economic status during the Cold War era. Sauvy's classification divided nations into three main groups. The first world, NATO of NATO-aligned countries. The second world, comprising the Soviet Union and its allied communist nation. And the third world, consisting of non-aligned and neutral countries. However, since the conclusion of the Cold War, these classifications have undergone significant transformation. So, si Alfred Sauvy ay French demographer ang nagama sa three worlds model. So, ang three worlds model, nag-refer ni siya sa categorization sa mga countries based sa ilang level of development and economic status during the Cold War era. Sauvy's classification divided the nations sa three main groups, which is the first world, mao ni ang mga countries na naka-alliance sa NATO or North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO-aligned means countries that were politically and military aligned with NATO. Next is second world. This group comprised the Soviet Union and its aligned communist nation. Aligned communist nation refers to countries under the influence or control of the Soviet Union. And the third world countries that did not align with either the communist or capitalist blocs during the Cold War era. In the contemporary context, the Three Worlds model is often perceived as an outdated Cold War relic, while remnants of these terms persist. No definitive consensus exists of categorizing countries within each group. The term third world is commonly used today. Scholars advocate for more precise terminology like developing as a general descriptor for developing nations. Nevertheless, many countries or lower-income countries to accurately capture the diversity and complexities of global economic landscape. So, in the contemporary context, ang three worlds model is seen as old-fashioned and inaccurate. The world is far more complex than three simple groups. Many countries were considered third world have developed economically, while ang uban first world countries face economic challenges. The term third world can also be offensive, implying a lower status. Instead of using these outdated terms, scholars now prefer terms like developing countries or low-income countries to describe nations na ay lower economic output and less development. This is a more accurate and respectful way to describe the diversity of nations around the globe. Next is the first world, originally denoting countries aligned with NATO during the Cold War. It signifies now highly developed nations in contemporary discourse. As per the Merriam-Webster dictionary, these countries are characterized as highly developed industrialized nations, often considered the westernized countries of the world. First world nations typically exhibit low political risk, high living standard, robust democracies, and economic stability. Their development status is on true metrics such as life expectancy, literacy rate, GDP, GNP, and the Human Development Index. So, First World originally means country aligned with US during the Cold War. Today is generally referred to the wealthy developed countries or dato na country. These nations are usually highly industrialized. They have strong manufacturing and technology sectors. Democratic, democratic, they have free and fair elections. High living standard, people generally have good healthcare, education, and comfortable lifestyle. Economically stable, their economies are strong and reliable. We can measure their developing using the life expectancy. Makita na diri kung how long live how long people live on average. Nya literacy rate, how many people can read and write. GDP or gross domestic product and GNP or gross national product. Kuni siyang nag-measures of country's total economic output. And Human Development Index, a broader measure of a country's well-being including health, education, and standard of living. Example sa kanang countries na kuan sa first world mga dato isang United States, ang Canada, Japan, and South Korea, and so on. Next is Second World. The term Second World refers to nations that occupy an intermediate position between the top tier and bottom tier in the political and economic realms. These countries, often overlooked in current discussion, fall between the extreme and are labeled as Second World nations. Initially, Second World countries were socialist, industrialized states under Soviet influence during the Cold War, while more stable and developed than the Third World nations. Second World countries are still progressing towards achieving the economic and political status of First World nations. They are sometimes referred to as emerging markets due to their evolving economies and gradual advancements toward First World standard. So, Second World used to describe countries that were somewhere in between the richest, which is ang First World, and the poorest, which is ang Third World nations. These are usually former communist countries with some industry but not as wealthy as developed as the First World. During the Cold War, they are often allied with the Soviet Union, with more developed than Third World countries. They still had a ways to go reach the economic and political level of the First World. Today, they're sometimes called emerging markets because their economies are growing and changing. So, next is the Third World. Initially characterized during the Cold War as nations unaligned with either the Soviet Union or NATO, the term Third World has evolved into a broader classification today. At present, Third World countries refers to the aggregate of the world's underdeveloped nations. These nations are labeled as developing or undeveloped countries. Third world countries are identifiable by low human development index scores, undeveloped industrialized industrial basis, and low GDP per capita. Common characteristics include high pollution level, limited access to clean water and sanitation, prevalent road traffic accidents, and low education rates, governmental corruption, and widespread poverty. So, third world originally mean countries that weren't aligned with either the US or the Soviet Union during sa Cold War. Now, it's generally used to describe poor or less developed countries or pobre nga nasod. The countries typically have low human development index. This means people have shorter lifespan, less education, and lower living standard. Weak economies, low GDP per capita or the average income per person, and underdeveloped industries. And many challenges like high pollution, lack of clean water and sanitation, poor roads, low educational levels, corruption, and widespread poverty. The I. So, it is important to remember that this is a very general description and there's a lot of diversity among third world countries. The term itself often considered outdated and potentially offensive, as implies inferiority, more accurate terms, and developing countries or low-income countries. Example sa kanang low-income countries or na belong sa third world kay ang sa kanang part sa South kanang Asia, like kanang sa Sub-Saharan Africa and kanang some countries sa Latin America and many more.